Welcome, everyone. It's Sam Mackay here from Enterprise DNA, and I'm joined in this discussion with Nick Mone and Brian Julius. Now, Nick and Brian are both part of the Enterprise DNA experts group, and today we're going to have a really interesting discussion on a brand new course module that we are releasing in the Enterprise DNA Learning Center. And it's going to be called Optimizing DAX. And Nick has been the creator of this. And so we're going to use this opportunity to get to know Nick a little bit better and also just ask him a little bit about the course and some of the course topics. And then also at the end, we're going to play a video which details how to work through the upcoming course release. So how to work through all of the content, how to dig into optimizing DAX formulas, one of the most interesting and difficult topics of Power BI in general. So it's been a long time coming for our platform, and I'm really grateful that Nick has decided to partner with us in creating this particular course. So Nick, why don't I just throw it to you very quickly, and you can do a bit more of an outline about your background, your journey with Power BI, and also with Enterprise DNA.
Thanks, Sam. I think like with a lot of people that come across Power BI, I came from an Excel background, and to be honest, I still kind of live in Excel because kind of a marriage between Excel and Power BI with moving more towards the Power BI side. But when I first started coming across the Power Pivot in Excel, it seemed interesting, but it seemed a little overbearing to learn a whole new, basically programming language when I was actually pretty good in Excel, not to sound like I'm bragging, but, I built a pretty good career on just being, efficient and fast in Excel. But then as I started to progress more in my career, the requirements and demands kept going up, but my efficiency in Excel wasn't keeping up with that pace. So a lot of it was me spending a lot more time doing things that I knew that Excel could do more in an automated way, but I didn't know how. And then as I was exploring that a little bit more, in came Power BI, Power Pivot. And then I want to say 3 years ago, I just said, you know what, this is going to be the future. This is what's coming up. This is what I need to learn. And I just started finding any and all resources I could on Power BI, on DAX, on Power Pivot, data model. I knew nothing about data modeling or, what a relational database was. This was all brand new to me. So I'm like, I got to find this training in this type of environment where I can learn it all. Now, I didn't learn it all in one day, and I'm still learning every single day. And, something, new comes up, like I have no idea how to solve it. So let's figure it out. So, I Googled it, I bought a couple of books, and those are good for introductions, but it still didn't get me to where I wanted to go and where I knew this could go. So then I just came across, Enterprise DNA, and it had that PBI ecosystem I like to think about. It's not just DAX. It's not just, the front end. It's everything. It's how it all works together. And then, as I progressed in that and just, my career really took a different trajectory because in the company I worked for, my boss especially really embraced the Power BI because she saw the power and the agility and the efficiency that, I was knocking out things that would take, say, 2-3 days. I was knocking off in 15 minutes. And then if there was some slight change they wanted to whatever this type of report was, instead of redoing it from scratch or trying to pick up, pieces where I already did something, you just change things around in Power BI and you're done. So as, the upper management saw the power of the Power BI, my willingness and dedication to it increased, in that same type of trajectory. So when I really dove into it, Enterprise DNA had it all. I was like, this is it. This is great. So from my point of view, it was, there's other things out there, of course, but, they kind of specialize in A or B or C, and Enterprise DNA and Sam and everyone here, it's the whole ecosystem. And part of the ecosystem is the DAX optimization, which comes way down the line after you learn the basics, because this is more akin to, the 100-meter sprint. And if you don't know how to walk yet, you're going to falter pretty fast. and get frustrated and say, you know what, forget it. And I know a lot of people out there like me, like, you know what, I'll pick up the basics. You know, you can read a blog or you can read, a book, and everything seems easy in that aspect. But once you throw your real world situations or problems into it, things take a drastic turn. Like wait a minute, this wasn't in the book. This is, it's not set up as perfectly as, the example in, XYZ book had. How do I go for that? So I highly recommend you follow the path of enterprise DNA of, starting small and just use the building blocks until you get further along. And then you can tackle the optimizing course, and you'd have this knowledge and this background where everything would make sense, and you're not going to be lost and just kind of, there's suggestions. I don't want to say golden rules or anything like that, because every situation is different. So we're hesitant to say always do this or always do that. Mm-hmm. So you can't just pick it up and say, I'll just start here and just apply whatever they tell me to, because it might work, it may not work. And say it does work, you may not know why. And then next time when it doesn't, you're not going to know how to reconcile it, how to fix it, or see where your thinking went off the wrong path. So I would always recommend start slow and build on it, because the DAX optimization course will not go over things like how to use calculate or, specific functions or anything like that. It will actually go into the details of what happens with calculate and context transition and all those, other topics that are a little more in depth than just a cursory knowledge of DAX and that type of thing. But what the optimization course also does is, since DAX doesn't exist in a vacuum, it exists in this ecosystem. It talks a lot about the data model, because your data model is the number one driving force of making your DAX fast. And that's what the optimization is. It's about making your DAX fast, but also correct. There's no point in having fast DAX if it gives you wrong numbers. And the worst thing you can do is give someone a report with wrong numbers. If you give someone's report and there's no numbers, that's good. And it's not great because there's something wrong, but at least you're not giving them bad information. So our aim here is you develop this foundation of DAX and data modeling and that type of thing, and you go to the next level with the optimization course of how to really get into the weeds of it and how to change things and how to really set it up. It's basically how to set yourself up for success versus failure. Everything's planning and then executing that plan.
Nice. That's a fantastic intro, and a couple of things I just want to highlight as well. Actually, like it's great to have you basically, you yourself are partnering in building out our ecosystem now. The Enterprise DNA ecosystem, and what I want to highlight also is that you'll be the first course creator within our ecosystem that isn't me. And so this is a great evolution for Enterprise DNA in general, and it's the start of something quite significant that we're building out this year. So hopefully that is somewhat of an honor for you, Nick, because I think your skill set is just perfectly positioned to offer up such a advanced course like Optimizing DAX, and I'm glad that this is also the first topic that is with the first other content creator other than myself. So those are two things that I just wanted to highlight to everyone tuning in as well, on just following on from your intro into Optimizing DAX. Now, one thing you did touch on it before is that I think and you have mentioned that Optimizing DAX is an advanced topic, right? And that's why it hasn't been part of our core education offering up until now. But I think that your models, everyone's getting more, more skilled in Power BI, and they're building more complex models now. And Optimizing DAX is becoming a far more important topic. Now, can you give maybe some practical examples of where this is actually relevant for Power BI developers and why this is a super valuable course for those wanting to take their Power BI skills to another level?
Sure. Well, first off, it is a great honor. I might have a little plaque made and put on my wall and say, first content creator, besides Sam to create content. No, Yeah, real world, because I apply this stuff every single day in my job that I do every single day. Like, so you can write these complex DAX expressions and get the right number, but when you start applying this on bigger models, if it takes minutes or tens or 20 minutes, it's too slow. So you got to figure out why, and it could be that there's some usual suspects like to call them. Could be your data model, could be how you're writing your DAX, and a couple other things that we talk about a little more in depth in the course. But in real life, a prime example is setting up your data model. Now, if you watch the course, which I hope you do, and let me know what you guys think. I harp a lot on the data model because I'm a firm believer that you start with the data model and set that up as best you can, and the DAX will come down the road easier. Because in my mind, it's always cool to write these 50, 60, 70 lines of DAX. Like, okay, that's awesome. It's very complex, but are you trying to overcome something in the data model that your DAX isn't really built to? So in the course, we show exactly how there's different engines working in the background, how to retrieve data and how they get the data and how the data is stored and all this. So an example would be, changing out a column in your data model from, say, a text field into an integer field, because the compression is what makes DAX fast. So you need to set up your data model and your columns to best feed the DAX compression. So changing or adding like a primary key instead of an alphanumeric is a great way, because DAX and the optimization and the compression does much better with integers. So if you can find out a way to swap out your customer name for an integer, you'll be well served. And not to go too far into it, but when your DAX, starts scanning and filtering, it's going to use these compressed columns, and it becomes much faster. And in the course, we really dive in like how exactly that's happening and why it's happening and what you could possibly do in your data model. Now, like I mentioned before, every data model is different. So these are kind of guidelines like, hey, you might want to try this or maybe give this a try. And for someone, it might, have a drastic improvement. Other people, not so much, because there's a lot of things in play. So, that's just a real quick, try this optimization of changing from alphanumeric or an alpha column to an integer column and see what happens. A lot of this is just making a change, test it, and see what happens. And always keep in mind that it's because it didn't work or it didn't optimize as what you thought in model A, don't automatically apply that thinking to model B, because that optimization may have a more drastic change in that model. So it's just a way of thinking about how to optimize it versus here's your 10 golden rules of optimizing your data no matter what. Believe me, I wish we had that. I wish I had that. It would cut down on this, the process a lot, but it also takes a lot of the fun. Like, these are just puzzles. We got to figure out how to best solve the puzzle as fast and efficient as possible.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm really glad that you've made a point to highlight that optimizing DAX is not about picking the right function every time. It's a combination of things. And so I'm glad that we're getting that out there before everyone has an opportunity to dive into it. Brian, I just want to bring you in here. Have you got something that you think would be good for us to go over or to ask Nick about?
Yeah, I wanted to talk to Nick about kind of the way for people to get the most out of this course. So both in terms of kind of the prerequisites you think people should have mastered by the time they take this. You mentioned calculate and context, and also kind of physically how to take the course. Like what's the best way to work through it from your perspective?
Okay, we'll start with the prereqs. So I think I kind of touched on it. You don't want to come in this, green or new. If you're like, if you just Google what is DAX and you're coming this course, you're going to be lost pretty fast. So I would highly recommend you go through at least the DAX part of the Enterprise DNA courses, and even the data model part, and because those all intertwine together. And I won't touch on how to what a data model is or how to set one up per se. I will show on how to optimize it, how to set your data model up the best way possible. And we will use different tools to really dig into the weeds of how to set that up, what to look for, and what your data model is really showing. And after we do that, we will then dive into the DAX. But if you go through the course and you're still kind of iffy or not sure on the DAX, I would wait till you have a solid foundation of DAX and at least a good understanding of what a data model is and what dimensional data modeling, should aim to do. And, what a primary key is, a foreign key, star schema, that type of thing. If you have a cursory knowledge of that and a solid knowledge of DAX, I think you'll be okay. I will say if you have more time to devote to this, I would say run through as much as the other courses you can and then dive into optimizing course. And of course, there's nothing to say that you can't come back and forth and, look at a module here and say, you know what, that didn't quite make sense to me. Let's go back to, what Sam said on this is a little more of an intro and, a 200 level versus the optimizing class, which is more of a 400 level, in the college ranking type thing. So I'd be sure that you have a knowledge and then you understand DAX and data modeling for sure.
What about kind of working through the course itself? Like, what's your recommendation?
I would not jump around in the course. Now, of course, you can, after you complete it, go back to certain sections if it didn't quite make sense. I know I do that a lot for just even my work. Like some of the, the simple things, like I'll just forget because there's a lot in here. And I'll have to jump back and look at my notes. But if you're coming into it new, into like you haven't watched any of the courses yet or gone through it, I would take it in sequential order. The way the course is designed and taught, section 2 builds on section 1 and section 3 builds on section 2. So hopping around, I think you will do a disservice to yourself because I will reference things that happen in previous modules. And a lot of the time I'll say, if you didn't happen to watch it, I would recommend you go back and watch it before you continue because you may be a little lost. So to stop that, I would say just watch them in order because it's designed in a very specific manner for a very specific reason because they're building blocks. The way I learn and then the way I teach now is, A leads to B, leads to C, leads to D. And when I try to go to A to, K, my mind can't do it. So that's how this is designed. So I'd recommend you really, really do it that way. But like I mentioned earlier, once you complete it or say you get to section 4 and something still doesn't make sense or isn't clear enough, you can go back and watch them because you already watched it. I wouldn't jump ahead to like 7 if you just got done with 1. But that's just my recommendation. I think you'll be lost if you kind of do that. So I'd highly recommend just going in sequential order at the first run of it.
Great. Thanks.
Nice. Okay. Well, I think what would be good to do now is we have an introductory video to play to everyone. And so, Nick, maybe you want to just give us a really short outline of what's in the video, what is covered, so everyone can, move into actually completing the course eventually in a efficient manner.
Great. This intro video will just kind of go through each of the topics that we talk about. Show you the name of the module and kind of a quick summary of what's going to go on in there. It's just meant to be like a quick intro. It's not going to give you any sort of, DAX epiphanies or any of that type of thing. It will just kind of give you a little taste of what's down the road and what you can look forward to learning and hopefully taking it into the real world and really just making your life better, easier, and making yourself more available to whatever company or however you're deploying these Power BI solutions.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thanks so much, Nick and Brian, for joining me on introducing this new course. We'll be releasing it in doing some small releases, I believe, Brian, in the coming days and weeks before we do a full release of the course. So everyone who's connected to Enterprise DNA will be able to access certain specific parts just to get a taste and a flavor for what the complete course module is all about. But once we fully release it, it will be located within the Enterprise DNA Learning Center, along with all of our other content. And you can locate that at portal.enterprisedna.co. Okay, awesome chat, guys. And oh, sorry, Brian, you go.
Just one more thing that I wanted to mention. It was a great idea that Nick had, a way to kind of practical application of this. It's something we're calling Optimization Lab. And what we're going to be doing is soliciting optimization problems from people on the forum. And if you've got a measure that's running slow, you're having a difficult time optimizing, send that in to us. And what Nick's going to do is every month going to pick out one or two of those. And I think it's the fourth Tuesday of every month, starting in February, is going to put out a video where he works through the concepts that he talks about in the course and takes this slow running measure and optimizes it and kind of works through the logic of how to apply those approaches from the course. So that's going to be an ongoing series that we're going to be doing monthly. And so we'll be sending out some messages soliciting input from members on that soon.
Awesome. So we've got, so just in summary, we've got the Optimizing DAX course, but also we've got an Optimization Lab initiative starting up in February, which Brian just mentioned. So two brand new and exciting parts to the Enterprise DNA ecosystem coming to you very soon. Okay, everyone, thanks for joining me. Great discussion. Thank you very much, Nick, for your partnership on this. I think this is an incredible amount of value embedded into just this course, and it's so great that you've been able to build this out for us at Enterprise DNA. So why don't we just kick into the introduction video? Okay, thanks everyone.
Hello, and welcome to the Optimizing DAX course by Enterprise DNA. Optimizing DAX is a very interesting topic, and I hope you find it as well. It's as much a science as it is an art. So with that in mind, we designed the class flow of topics in a specific way. So let's take a quick look at those. Our first module will be on what is VertiPack. VertiPack is how our data is stored, so we need to figure out how to set up our data model first that can best optimize or use the DAX equations as best possible. After that, we will do an introduction to DAX Studio, which is a great free software available, really the only way to be able to measure and see what's happening behind the scenes with all your DAX measures and associated data model. Then we'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into DAX Studio in Module 3, where we look at certain data model metrics and how to use those to figure out what could be a potential bottleneck and how to fix those. Then we'll look at what's under the hood in Video 4. That is the engines that's driving your DAX measures. There's two different quote-unquote engines, and we will cover each of those in pretty good depth. Number 5 builds on number 4. It's the logical and physical query plans, which is part of the two engines in number 4. And then in Module 6, we will take a deep dive into the storage engine, which is also part of the two engines in number 4. And then number 7, we will show how to measure query performance to see where the bottlenecks could be and how to solve for them. And then number 8, finally, the last module is actually optimizing DAX. Now, a lot of people might think, well, why can't we just start with that? Well, we have to build this foundation. So that's why videos 1 through 7 are very important, and I highly suggest watching them in order. Now, if you listen to this video and you're looking at this screen here, and it seems overwhelming or you have no idea what I'm really talking about right now, don't fret. When I first started getting into this optimization, I was in the same boat. It seemed a little overwhelming and wasn't really worth my time. And I could tell you without a doubt, it's most certainly worth my time, and I sure hope it's worth your time. So please watch these videos in order, even if you have an idea of what the topic is going to cover, because they do build on each other. So if you do watch them out of order, you could be kind of lost at times, but that's okay if you are. Just feel free to ask questions. Just watch the videos a couple of times and just experiment and see what happens.